everyone. Welcome to another episode of Questing Onward. I am Whitney.
And I'm Ashton.
I will be hosting tonight. You haven't really heard my voice at the beginning of an episode, so here I am. Enjoy. We are going to deep dive into the art of communication, some of the things that we like to do in our lives, and some of the nerdy things that we also enjoy.
Yeah.
And then as for announcements.
Yeah, I think by the time this goes, ideally, if everything goes smoothly, everything should now be on YouTube. So you can check us out there, watch our beautiful faces. We haven't had the ability yet to get them up there, but they will be up there ideally by now. And then secondary, please feel free to keep up those comments. We appreciate them. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We appreciate it a lot. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. So today we are going to be talking about how to have a conversation about the conversation. So the conversation are those lovely growing moments that
the ones you don't want to have.
Yes, those delicate conversations, those arguments, those frustrations, all of the above.
Yeah.
How do you have a conversation about those conversations?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So this was something that up until recently I didn't even know how to explain. It's something that I think we just developed and we're just really passionate about. And I'm incredibly I love communication. I think that's something that we talked about a lot at the beginning of our relationship was overall how to have effective communication and why it's so important to ultimately talk about those moments and if anything, encourage those moments. I really learned the importance of this on my mission when I was companionship inventory. I think a lot of times people for those of you who don't know, it's you have a companion, you have to talk to them about hard things like your friend, right?
A partner.
Yeah. And so I learned wow, this is so powerful if done the right way. And so when we first got married, it's something that we, already had that skill set to a certain degree, and we just continued to develop and add on to it and slightly tweak. And so after years of doing this, I was at one point, just not that long ago, a couple of months back, I was actually reading a book by David Goggins. And he talks about this concept of an AAR, or an after action report. And it perfectly encapsulated the idea of this conversation. And so what it is simply after a conversation, after these hard conversations, you actually dive into the conversation itself, right? How did it go? What were the ups and downs? The actual communication style, where were frustrations in that moment? And so I guess, let me ask you, as we've fine-tuned this throughout our years, really made this is something we've done, since day one of our relationship, truthfully. But what do you feel or I guess before that, maybe how do we do this? What does that actually look like?
Oh, yeah. So, we actually had one not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I have to say, just at the beginning of this, that this is something that I'm so glad that we're not newly married, because this is such a skill that we've honed and developed over the years. It makes these conversations so much easier.
Yeah.
But so these conversations, usually they'll start off, all right, what did we do good in this conversation? How did we deliver? Do you feel like I was listening enough to you?
Yep.
Do you feel like I was too emotional when I said this? Which it's okay to be emotional, obviously, but I think that there are some things that are said in emotion that probably aren't appropriate or
don't land the right way, right?
Yep. And so I think we'll talk about delivery a lot as well of, I want to be sure and aware that I'm listening to you and that I'm actively listening to you and giving you time to feel like you're heard.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure that you're understanding what I'm trying to say and that my points are being conveyed. And so we'll just go through step by step of what we did well next time in the conversation, how I can communicate a little bit better, maybe how he can listen a little bit better, things that maybe not triggered me, but things that I took the wrong way.
Correct.
And so how he could deliver that a little bit better in the next conversation. Those are just some of the things that we kind of break down.
Yeah. And I think it's really just after the conversation, and typically once it's come to some form of a conclusion to some way, it's really diving into okay, anything else we want to discuss? And then after that, it's so I noticed at these moments, as we're talking about this, I want to talk about the conversation. Why were you, I felt like you kind of got frustrated when I said this. Why were you, what did I do wrong? Right. And I think at the very beginning, these conversations aren't always going to be
Oh,
even good.
they're not cookie cutter clean.
No, they're not at all.
It's messy. I mean,
It's hard.
takes practice.
It does. But I think like it's so important. And again, it's the whole idea of like having a conversation, and maybe it's even like inception, y'all. It's like having a conversation about having a conversation about having the conversation, right? Like it's like the most important part is just the expectations that everyone understands what's going on. And it's got to the point that like we literally have incorporated this in basically every part of our life, truthfully. And like I've just found that like having conversations about everything and like how did the thing go has just like completely deepened those experiences in every way, right? Like those frustrating moments, even though we still have them, like you said, we had one not that long ago about a disagreement, and like that right there, like afterwards it always ends in like a positive note and some form of growth. Like it doesn't mean the conversations always are going to be easy, and like we've done this so long, I feel like we're really good at them, and they're still not easy, right? But I think that that's like where the power of these conversations, these AARs really come from, is like being willing to learn about them and being willing to like
make it better for both people. I want to make it the best experience for you and make sure you're being heard, you're being understood. And I also want to feel that same respect on my end, that I'm being heard, I'm being listened to, I'm being understood as well. We're on the same page.
Yeah. Where do you feel like, besides just like communication, do you feel like this is like played a factor in any other parts of our relationship or our life?
I mean, again, Ashton kind of said that we dissect everything. And so we'll dissect conversations we have with other people, conversations we overhear, situations that happen. I mean, we do this with parenting, how we can do better with parenting our children.
We do it in our intimacy life, like, deeply. Like in every part of our life, this is like ingrained. And so, yeah, I mean, how do you feel like, I guess, what would you say is like maybe the one or two biggest benefits that you have seen in our relationship from establishing this AAR?
We are one-minded. We are of one mind. I think that these conversations, they align you. You know what to expect. There's no longer this dread of having these hard conversations. They're still not fun.
Right.
But it's not a PTSD moment where you both walk away from this thinking, I feel like they just completely didn't get what I was trying to say. I don't feel understood. I feel more frustrated than when we started this conversation. It never feels like that. I think those are the big things for me. What about you? Are there...
I would say, yeah, I think for me, I'd agree with all of those. But I think for me, like the biggest one, and this is something we'll probably talk about in a future episode, is like the idea of having proper expectations. I believe with all of my heart that like 99% of problems are strictly founded in improper expectations in some way, shape, or form. Like I would put that like on a t-shirt. I really do believe that thoroughly, that
proper expectations.
Like, I really do think that's like where all problems arise from, is improper expectations, truthfully. But I think that the reason why this is so good is it allows a place to set expectations about how future conversations are going to go. And so, like, you learn, I hear all the time, like, I've literally shared this AAR with a couple buddies over the last few days because they've brought up like frustrations and like communications that they've had. And I'm like, man, if they just did this, they wouldn't have them. Because oftentimes the problems arise in the conversation itself. Like they're like, yeah, I just don't see it. I'm like, well, did you talk about that? No. I'm like, why didn't you have a conversation about this? Like, I think people understand that they're meant to have conversations about difficult things. I think people miss the mark that they should also be, you should also have those same conversations about the conversation itself. Like 100%. And I think by doing that is, I think, like, it's so vital for, the growth of relationships.
Well, and can you imagine if someone after the conversation that you were both really emotional through came up to you and said, I know this was super hard for you and I want you to feel safe. How can I make this a better experience for you next time? Like, how would that make you feel?
Yeah.
It'd be like mind blowing.
You'd be stoked. You'd be like, oh my gosh, they actually care.
Oh, they were listening.
They were listening to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, like, that's it. That sentence right there is like, that's the goal of it, right? Is that ideally after every hard conversation, you should strive to make that conversation better so that the next time you have to have one, because it'll happen, that it's going to be a better conversation because you had a conversation about it. And so, yeah, I think it's one of the most important parts about our relationship. So anyways, yeah, that's all we have for you guys today, though. We appreciate you Let us know as you implement this AAR and how it helps you and benefits your guys' relationships, and give us some feedback if you have any other things you do in those moments. Thanks.
Thank you.